All right, friends, welcome back to the Blessed Family Podcast and Happy New Year. It is 2024, which is officially insane. I can remember when we were all excited about the year 2000, almost a quarter of a century ago. And that doesn't mean we're getting older. It just means that, I don't know what it means, but we're all in our prime. Well, friends, man, I love New Year's. I love new beginnings. Our God is a God of new beginnings. You know, right there in Genesis chapter 1 on day 4, he speaks of the sun, the moon, and the stars, marking seasons, times, and years. And we can rip on New Year's resolutions and criticize that, but I think there's something too. Well, for instance, the first day of each week is the Lord's Day. And we remember Christ every day of the week, but we especially on the Lord's Day, we assemble, we worship, we remember, we pray, we very often remember the body and blood of Christ in the Lord's Supper. And so there's something about time. There's something about a new week, waking up to a new day, and this is a new year. And so we aren't going to talk about this today, but I really want to encourage you. I think we did this the first day of last year, which was funny because I got the year wrong when I announced it, but would encourage you to make goals for this year. So go back and look at the podcast from a year ago on making goals for the new year for 2023, and would encourage you to check that out. All right, friends. Wow. Lots of exciting stuff just popping in my mind right now, but I've got to stick with my notes. Otherwise, I won't be a good manager of your time. So today's title is, Could Your 12-Year-Old Child Survive in Jerusalem? Pretty crazy, but I bet you know where that's coming from. That's coming from Luke I believe it's chapter 1 or chapter 2, where Jesus is left by... I'm not sure if they left him, if he escaped. I'm not sure what happened, but Mary and Joseph are heading back home, and they realize a couple of days out that, whoa, where is Jesus? And they go back, and depending on how you read the text, Jesus was left in Jerusalem on his own at the age of 12 for 3 to 5 days, depending on how you read the text. For 3 to 5 days, Jesus had to clothe himself, he had to bathe himself, he had to feed himself, he had to take care of shelter. And if you regularly listen to our show at all here at the Blessed Family, you know that we love rites of passage. We love training up our children and then testing that training. We love doing things that make them grow up quicker. I mean, what our culture is lacking across the board is maturity, manliness, womanliness, responsibility. And so we decided to turn this story of Christ being left in the city into a rite of passage for our children. And so we're going to talk about that. Also just popped in my mind, we have a rite of passage coming up. Well, I say rite of passage. We have an event coming up where Jedediah and Isaiah, our just turned 17-year-old and our 13-year-old, are going to go out in the wilderness for 3 days. And usually when you think of rites of passage, you think of things like that. Like, this is like survival skills. Like, what's that guy's name? I think it's Bear Grylls. He goes out and he survives. And that's great. And we can learn a lot from that, but it's very unlikely that our children are going to ever find themselves stranded in the wilderness needing to survive. Now, we need to teach them that. It's important, it's good, but they're definitely going to experience what I would call more the real world, right? Grocery shopping, getting money out of the bank. And definitely, as was the case in Christ, they can find themselves alone in the city. If you have just a handful of kids, and if they're over 5 years of age, you've probably done, let's just all have parent confession time. You've looked around and said, oh my goodness, where's my child? And your 5-year-old, your 7-year-old, your 12-year-old is now, they've disappeared. And scary, scary times, but they need to know how to act. They need to know how to handle themselves. They need to be okay not knowing where they are and knowing what to do. Kind of getting off the course of this topic, let me get back on. What we decided to do was to put our son, Jedediah, we did this with Jared and Isaiah. We've been doing this for a few years, but we decided to give him a day in the city of Marble Falls, Texas by himself with certain objectives. Now, disclaimer right up front, depending on where you live, this might be a very bad idea. And the ages may change. Now, we live in a pretty safe place, so I think Jared did this when he was around 11, and we had no problem with him because of the training he had received, the character he had, the knowledge he had. We had no problem with him being alone all day in Marble Falls, Texas. There's other cities we wouldn't have even dreamt of doing that. Now, it also changes based on male and female. For instance, my sons and daughters, I'm okay with them doing this between the ages of 11 to 13. My daughters, no, it's going to be more 15, 16. So please be smart, be wise. We are not held liable for any foolish choices you make because of what we're going to tell you today. Okay, so Jedediah had a day in town. This is what we did. We took him into town. This was yesterday, January the 8th. And we had him going into town. We had him close his eyes, put his head down. We drove in circles trying to trick him. And we dropped him off somewhere where he had no idea where he was. I said, okay, open your eyes. Do you know where you are? He goes, I have no idea where I am. I said, perfect. He had a phone in case there was an emergency. Actually, he borrowed his mother's phone. He was to text pictures of all the things he was to accomplish that day. And we said, okay, have fun. And we left him there, and he was there. He was excited. He did not know where he was. It didn't take him long to find out, but he had to use some skills. First of all, he had to be okay. Look, a young man or woman, I'm going to focus on boys. A boy needs to be all of a sudden alone and not panic. All of a sudden alone and not freak out. So he was alone. He didn't know where he was, and he was okay with that. And so here's some stuff that he had to do that day. He had to go to the bank where he has a bank account. He had to withdraw money out of that bank account to provide for himself that day because we didn't give him food. We didn't give him water, right? So he had to go to the bank, get the money, and then he had to feed himself. And this is not only him having the people skills to go into a fast food place or into a restaurant and say, hello, can I have this, please? That's a good skill, but also this helped connect the dots for Jedediah on money. And this is a great story. He came back or later that day when we picked him up, and I'll talk about that in a bit, we asked him, we're like, well, what are some of the experiences you had? And he goes, well, I went to this Fresh and Fruity. It's a frozen yogurt place, and I got what I thought was a small thing of ice cream, and I checked out, and it was $12. And it's funny because he said he just stood there looking at the woman behind the cash register with like his jaw dropped, and she had to say it again. Yes, sir, that'll be $12.87, and he paid. And so it's kind of a wake-up call that, hey, when mom and dad pay, everything seems very affordable, but now you're paying, right? We had a museum he was supposed to go to. He did not make that. That's part of the mission that he failed. He had to go buy a gift. So I have a good friend who's an attorney in town, and so Jedediah went and bought a gift. So he had to go to Dollar Tree, I think he went to, buy this gift, to go over, present it to my friend, his friend, and say, hello, sir, this is for you. He had to go thrift shopping at this one place and buy a book. I think he bought a Hank the Cowdog book. Shout out to Hank. Here's something else he failed to do. We said, you have to take a selfie with Betty Boop in front of Miss Lollipop's shop. So Miss Lollipop's on the main street, and there's a statue of Betty Boop, and he didn't do it. Why? Because he didn't know who Betty Boop was. And that's when I knew that our homeschool education had absolutely failed. Just joking. But what should he have done in that? And this was things I coached him on afterwards. If you don't know something and you need to know it, you're going to have to ask somebody. So he could have gone to the people who work there and say, hello, thank you. I'm looking for Betty Boop. And they would set it right there. What else? He had to go to the library, read a book. He ended up going to his karate class. He didn't partake in it, but he said hi to everyone. And then he met his mother at a restaurant, and they had dinner together. It started raining. He had to get out of the rain, right? He had to duck and cover. So the goal of this, and this is where I'm giving this to you as parents, for you to be creative. And you don't have to do exactly this, or you don't even have to do anything like it, but start thinking about ways to get your children. I mean, look, we live in an epoch where some children, some teenagers cannot have a sincere, respectable conversation with an adult. Some of them are scared to go out in public. Some are scared to drive. Some are petrified at the thought of going into a bank and withdrawing money. So you want to attack this right away. I mean, Jedediah is 13. Jared did the same thing when he was 11. Isaiah when he was about 12. The goal of all of this is building confidence in our children. And you know, this isn't pride. This is confidence. They need to have the confidence that if all of a sudden they were left alone in a city, they would know what to do. If all of a sudden at the age of 16 they needed to drive to the far reaches of the state or country and do something, they could do it. For example, Isaiah 17, IV 15, just turned 15 a couple of days ago. They are 4 or 5 hours north of us right now at their cousin's home. And they're there working, learning skills, and they drove up there all by themselves, and they're driving back all by themselves. And they have the confidence to do that because of opportunity that we've given them. So here's a quick one you can do next time you go to the grocery store. Let's say that you forget the butter and you need to just make a quick run to the store. You drive by and you ask your 10, 13, 15-year-old, hey, here's some cash, run in, get the butter, check out, I'll meet you right here. It's just fun. And you'll know at what age. I mean, I want to say the younger the better, but no, it's not true. You could definitely do that too young, get yourself in trouble and kind of scar your child, but you need to work them into adulthood. Have them order their own meal at a restaurant. If you're delivering something to someone in your town who's sick, maybe have your children go up and knock on the door. Maybe have them say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, this is for you. God bless you. Can I pray for you? Teach them to do adult things, conversation, buying things, navigating. Have them sit shotgun, give them a map and say, okay, we're going from here to there. Which road should I take? Have them plan out your next road trip. Teach them how to look up directions online. Teach them how to use a GPS. Teach them how to use a map, a compass. The list goes on and on, okay? So we had a lot of fun yesterday. Once again, it builds confidence in our children, and it's just fun. Anytime that my children, my boys especially, come to mama and they say, I'm bored, she comes straight to me and she goes, you have sons, they're bored, they need to be about the business of men. Boredom is the incubator for sin. It's like, all right, put on a blindfold. I'm going to drop you off in town. Here's a list of objectives. Have fun. Man, there's so many. You know what? Would you please email us or comment on this and give some of your own ideas? I mean, because this is where we can pull together as parents, as Christians, as kingdom citizens, and come up with creative, fun ways to build confidence. When we had Jared and Isaiah put an ad online, 2 young men will show up on time, work hard, $20 an hour. They got all kinds of calls. And, the first time they're like, okay, so Dad, you're coming. I'm like, no, I'm not going. Here's the address, look it up, go there, knock on the door, engage with the people, and man, did that grow them up. To go to a place where you haven't met the people, knock on the door and say hello, introduce yourself and say, how can I help you? Hear the job, think about it. I mean, that really grows them up, and that's the goal. We want to be against the adolescent spirit of the age, which thinks, oh, it's cute, let's just let them be little irresponsible leeches for a few years, and then they'll grow up maybe after college. No, in the scriptures, in history, up until very, very recently, up until Darwinian evolutionism infiltrated how we raise our children, you had babies, children, and then, 10 to 12, 10 to 13, they became men and women, young men, young women. What your great-grandparents were doing, the skills they had, and the daily activity that they experienced at the age of 13, your great-grandparents today, many 30-year-olds aren't there yet. So we need to be the solution. Friends, we are the solution. We are the church. Christ is the solution, and he is the light of the world, but then he says, you are the light of the world. So let's let our light shine. All right, friends, hope you enjoyed this. Excited about this new year, excited to pour into you. Hey, we've got some new resources coming out. We just put our epic story video series on Right Now Media. It's also on our website, jareddodd.com, and we have a book to go with it. Would encourage you to check that out. We also have our next scroll book, which I believe is going to be called The Warrior in the Code. We'll see. This is scroll book number 4. It is in its final edits. Will be coming out very soon, and we're excited for what this new year holds. We're going to be in Florida at the Florida Shindig later this month. Next month, February, we're doing the teen track up at North Dakota. I love that place. I love those people. Cannot wait to get up there. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. God bless you. Let's make this the best year yet. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.